Welcome to another AI pattern recognition deep dive.
Today, we are taking on, well, one of the most ambitious technological frameworks I think I've ever come across in our source material.
He's definitely up there.
It's a project that really tries to solve this core, almost ancient paradox of human civilization. How do we pursue prosperity? How do we pursue profit without, sort of guaranteeing our own destruction in the process?
And that paradox is exactly why this whole concept of for-profit AI, or FPAI, was even developed. It's not just another financial modeling tool or something simple like that.
No, not at all.
It's a comprehensive, an integrated AI pattern recognition system. It's really designed to be a kind of navigational guide for global civilization.
I've started to see it as a cognitive prosthetic that humanity, frankly, desperately needs. The mission statement is just so clear. We need to generate value. And they define that broadly as profit to survive and thrive.
Right.
But, and this is the crucial part, we have to simultaneously identify and avoid all the destructive patterns that pop up when that short-term gain becomes the only thing we're organizing around.
That avoidance mechanism is the whole game, really. It's the critical differentiator. FPAI aims to leverage AI to identify, to understand, and then to navigate these profit-oriented patterns across, all aspects of life.
Economic, social, political.
Exactly, even personal. The ultimate goal is to ensure human progress and collective well-being. It's supposed to be the mechanism that finally aligns our own self-interest with global sustainability.
That is such an ambitious scope, and it dictates just a massive timeline.
It has to.
The sources mention that while this whole integrated system has an implementation goal of, 15 to 30 years for full global deployment?
That's for full deployment, yeah.
We could realistically expect to see some initial, measurable, maybe even game-changing benefits appearing within the first 3 to 5 years.
And that's where the conversation really gets interesting. It's FPAI's definition of profit. That's the key.
The good money versus the bad money.
Precisely. It actively defines and monitors what healthy, sustainable value creation looks like, the good money, while it's constantly searching for any deviations that lead into harmful exploitation. It gives you a real-time risk assessment for ethical and long-term viability.
So the core suggestion is that the most profitable path, once you account for everything.
When all the externalities are accounted for, yes.
Well,
that path is always the sustainable path.
Okay, so let's unpack the core mechanics of this system. Before we can really see what FPAI does, we need to understand how it thinks.
Right.
The sources define it as this integrated AI pattern recognition system that handles 5 key tasks, all at the same time.
And these tasks really define its scope. First, it identifies profit-seeking behaviors across every domain you can imagine.
Like from a farmer choosing crops to a politician deciding how to vote?
Exactly. Second, it analyzes the consequences of those profit-driven decisions on all the stakeholders, so individuals, communities, ecosystems, you name it.
And third, it predicts outcomes based on historical trends and a constant flow of real-time data.
And then the fourth and fifth tasks, that's where it moves beyond just prediction and into actual intervention.
Okay, this is the proactive part.
That's right. The fourth task is to provide personalized guidance for ethical, multi-stakeholder profit generation. It gives you the constructive suggestion.
And the fifth.
The fifth task is the crucial guardrail. It's monitoring for those deviations into harmful exploitation and then triggering automated alerts.
The sheer scale of data required to do this just sounds immense. I mean, how does the AI practically manage pattern recognition across everything from stock market data to, social media sentiment?
Well, the underlying mechanisms are what make that global scope possible. The pattern recognition relies heavily on a really complex combination of statistical analysis and deep machine learning algorithms.
So it's systematically identifying relationships within just petabytes of diverse data sets.
It's looking for the shape of a successful or a destructive system. It's not just looking at isolated numbers.
Let's break down that toolkit then, because this is where a lot of traditional analysis just falls short, right? When we talk about statistical analysis, FPAI is going way beyond simple averages.
It absolutely has to. For probability-based prediction, for instance, FPAI uses Bayesian inference.
Okay.
This is essential because it allows the system to continuously update the probability of some future event happening based on new evidence that comes in.
So if a company takes an action, Bayesian inference is constantly refining the likelihood of that action leading to, say, a financial crisis or maybe an environmental breakthrough.
Precisely. It's a dynamic risk model, not a static one.
And what about for forecasting the scale of the impact? How big the crisis or the success will be?
That's handled by regression models. FPAI uses these not just to predict a single outcome, but to model a whole range of potential outcomes, all the what-ifs, and how sensitive those outcomes are to different variables.
So if a factory decides to cut its pollution controls,
The regression models will forecast not only the increased pollution level, but the ripple effect on public health costs, nearby property values, everything.
and you mentioned clustering algorithms. Traditional economic analysis can often miss things like hidden collusion or similar behavioral traps because it only compares like to like.
Right, and clustering is really the detective work. It
Yeah.
identifies similar profit-seeking behaviors that might look completely different on the surface, but actually share the same underlying structure.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so a tech monopoly exploiting data asymmetry in California and, say, a predatory lending scheme exploiting information asymmetry in sub-Saharan Africa.
They look totally different.
But the system identifies that the pattern of exploitation is identical, which then allows for a generalized counter-strategy.
So we've got the shapes and probabilities statistically. But to recognize true systemic complexity, FPAI has to use advanced neural network processing. This is where it gets really specialized.
It does. The first tool here is convolutional neural networks, or CNNs,
CNNs, I know them from image recognition.
famous for it. But FPAI applies them to spatial and visual patterns in economic data. Think about analyzing satellite imagery to track deforestation rates versus resource extraction profits.
Or recognizing patterns in urban sprawl that correlate with poor social cohesion.
Exactly. The CNN doesn't just see a picture. It sees a heat map of value flow and friction points in the real world.
That makes a lot of sense. It's reading the physical signs of economic decisions. So what about tracking change over time, the temporal patterns?
For that, we turn to recurrent neural networks, or RNNs. These are necessary for temporal profit pattern analysis. They allow FPAI to remember past data points and apply them to sequences.
So it's vital for detecting things like short-term bubbles or long-term stagnation.
Or supply chain choke points that emerge cyclically, or even those slow, creeping patterns of institutional decline. It allows FPAI to spot a systemic issue that unfolds over years, not just weeks.
And then you have the really knotty problems, right? Like global regulatory environments, multinational agreements, complex legislation that involves dozens of competing interests. It sounds like a job for the absolute cutting edge of AI.
It is, and that requires transformer models. These are essential for understanding those complex, multi-stakeholder profit relationships. They can synthesize massive volumes of unstructured data.
Like what kind of data?
Policy documents, lobbying transcripts, social media sentiment, news reports. They pull it all together to model how a decision benefits one group while maybe harming another across a globalized context. Transformers let FPAI model something like the unintended global consequences of one country's trade policy decision.
Okay, so if the system is designed to provide guidance in real time, it can't be static. It can't just be trained once and then left alone. How does it keep adapting?
That's handled by the real-time learning systems. This ensures continuous adaptation based on new data, self-correction mechanisms that adjust predictions as global circumstances change, like a pandemic or a natural disaster.
And it has critical feedback loops. Tell me more about those. That sounds like the accountability mechanism.
It is the ethical governor. The system has to incorporate actual, measurable human outcomes, social cohesion scores, health metrics, environmental data back into its pattern refinement.
So if FPAI predicts a certain action is profitable, but 2 years later, community health plummets,
The system must self-correct its own definition of profitability to weigh those externalized costs far more heavily the next time. This forces the system's definition of value to stay aligned with our collective well-being.
we've established the technical backbone. So the big question now is, what does this actually look like when it hits the pavement? Where does FPAI start measuring the messy reality of human decision-making?
Well, Section 2 dives right into the application domains, starting with the most basic one, human behavior patterns.
Okay.
FPAI focuses on those constant trade-offs we all make, short-term gain versus long-term sustainability, and that tension between individual gain and collective benefit.
The example in the source, the worker who's considering cutting safety procedures for overtime pay, that just perfectly captures that friction. It's a classic ethical dilemma with immediate financial consequences.
Precisely. The worker faces a choice. Take an extra $500 this week, or spend 2 hours on the required safety check.
Right.
FPAI analyzes that single decision by ingesting data from thousands of historical incidents, tracking that worker's personal health history, checking the plant's recent maintenance schedule, and modeling the potential long-term career impact of an injury.
So it's not just a generic be safe warning, it's a personalized risk assessment.
Exactly. And the result is this chillingly specific alert. Proposed action shows 73% correlation with patterns leading to workplace injury within 6 months. This calculation integrates your current stress markers, 710, and machine maintenance logs, 4 days overdue.
That 73% is meant to just stop you in your tracks.
It is. And here's the critical part. It doesn't just stop the negative behavior. It provides a superior, sustainable alternative.
It shifts the framework entirely.
It does. It identifies an alternative pathway. Process optimization training could increase productivity 15% while maintaining safety, qualifying you for advancement, and a $1,200 quarterly bonus after 6 weeks.
So FPAI frames this choice not as risk versus reward, but as a low-return, high-risk choice versus a high-return, sustainable risk choice.
It makes the superior long-term path the easier one to see and to choose.
Let's move up the chain of complexity to economic patterns, specifically that battle between extractive, monopolistic behavior and regenerative, competitive innovation.
This is often seen as just inevitable, that big businesses have to get bigger by crushing competition.
Yeah.
FPAI tests that assumption with the local business pricing scenario.
The small grocery store owner.
Right. They're facing high costs, and they're considering maximizing short-term margins, reducing quality, and just ignoring community goodwill.
And the traditional high-risk pattern, the one that feels like the fastest way to stay afloat, FPAI, analyzes that as resulting in 34% lower 5-year survival rate. Why so high a failure rate for that kind of thinking?
Because FPAI accounts for the externalized costs of burning your social capital. Reducing quality saves you money today, but it degrades the customer relationship. Ignoring competitors means you stop innovating.
So the system models the cumulative effect of all these transactional decisions.
And it predicts rapid customer fatigue and eventual market irrelevance.
Conversely, the FPAI-guided, sustainable pattern, optimizing the value-to-price ratio, investing in quality, building customer loyalty ecosystems, that shows a 34% higher 5-year survival rate.
And the detailed scenario shows exactly how. The owner considers raising prices 20% on essential items to generate an immediate $50,000 quarterly profit.
Which sounds good on paper.
But FPAI detects an 89% correlation with similar stores in similar areas that faced a 60% customer base loss within 12 months. That $50,000 profit is immediately revealed to be a poison pill.
So what's the regenerative alternative it suggests?
Dynamic pricing on premium items while maintaining essential goods pricing. The model suggests expanding the offering of niche, high-margin local specialty products.
I see.
This pathway shows a 71% correlation with 15% customer base growth and a sustainable $75,000 quarterly profit over 36 months. FPAI teaches the owner that the most sustainable profit comes from expanding the pie, creating high-value relationships, not just taking a bigger slice of essential needs.
This kind of pattern recognition is so critically needed in the world of healthcare, which, often has the most dangerous and perverse incentives. Let's talk about health patterns.
The pattern recognized here is really an institutionalized tragedy. Hospitals and systems often profit more from treating chronic complications than from preventing them.
So delayed intervention is structurally incentivized.
It is. FPAI's intervention targets this by identifying those prevention to treatment profit ratios, calculating the true cost of delayed intervention, both financially and in years of lost health, and then modeling alternative capitated payment structures.
And how does FPAI introduce this intervention through the example they use, the wearable health monitor?
Well, let's expand on that. The wearable detects a persistent pattern of fluctuating blood pressure and highly irregular sleep cycles, which match pre-cardiovascular event indicators.
Traditional healthcare just waits for the crisis to happen.
Right. FPAI, however, immediately alerts the user and their primary care network with a comprehensive risk profile.
And what does that profile include?
It suggests immediate lifestyle modifications, recommends a structured 6-week digital health program, and the prediction is crucial. A 68% prevention probability.
Wow.
And the AI simultaneously calculates the financial impact. $45,000 in average healthcare savings per case, $120,000 in lifetime productivity savings, and 12 years of additional healthy life expectancy.
So FPAI essentially proves that the profitable path for the hospital, if you view it over a 20-year window and factor in community well-being, is actually promoting prevention.
Exactly. It turns health into a proactive asset rather than just a reactive expense. It uses data to override the short-term incentives that were created by traditional insurance models rewarding episodic care.
Okay, shifting to political patterns. FPAI tackles the mechanisms of influence policy decisions driven by lobbying profit versus public benefit. This has to be the most sensitive area of pattern recognition.
It's the core of democratic risk analysis, really. FPAI is designed to recognize three patterns: policy decisions driven primarily by lobbying money, electoral strategies that prioritize funding networks over what constituents actually need, and the specific, subtle patterns of regulatory capture.
Where the regulator starts thinking like the industry they're supposed to be regulating.
Precisely.
Let's analyze the environmental regulation example from the source. We have $50 million in industry lobbying, correlated with a proposed weakening of a regulation that has a 73% correlation likelihood based on past voting. What does FPI do with that?
It doesn't just note the correlation, it quantifies the externalized cost. It predicts a $500 million short-term corporate profit for the industries involved. But simultaneously, its long-term consequence modeling projects $2.3 billion in long-term environmental damage, 1,000 additional respiratory illnesses in the surrounding communities, and an $800 million negative economic impact on tourism and recreation in that area.
So it separates the financial profit, the $500 million, from the true societal cost, which is over $3 billion in negative impact. That is potent.
And this information is immediately channeled into the citizen interface. This app provides real-time transparency, notifying the local constituency. Your representative receives $75,000 from industries affected by this specific vote. Historical pattern shows 91% vote alignment with major donors on similar environmental legislation.
That dramatically reduces the information asymmetry. It makes the conflict of interest just unavoidable for the public to see.
And critically, it suggests alternatives. It identifies alternative policies already submitted in other jurisdictions that have a 68% better cost-benefit ratio for the public. It arms the citizen with data, not just outrage.
Let's move to education patterns. The focus here is on that toxic feedback loop of student debt versus the actual return on investment.
FPAI targets the quality of for-profit education versus verifiable outcome metrics, and that massive student debt burden versus true earning potential and curriculum relevance. It's performing a huge personalized ROI calculation for every single student.
The personalized education pathway example is so important. A 16-year-old interested in tech, family income of $45,000. For this demographic, college choice can define their entire financial life.
The traditional path analysis models the expectation: a 4-year computer science degree at a state university, resulting in $120,000 of debt.
And the predicted outcome is only a 52% job placement probability.
Right, because the program's curriculum is lagging behind market demand. And the starting salary is $65,000, the resulting debt-to-income ratio is deeply concerning, showing a high risk of default within 10 years.
Why would the job placement probability be so low, even with a CS degree?
Because FPAI recognizes the pattern of institutional profit driving the curriculum design, not market demand. The university prioritizes filling seats, not updating complex AI coursework. FPAI sees the mismatch between skills taught and skills demanded by local high-growth employers.
So FPA suggests an alternative path that maximizes the students' personal profit and sustainability.
The alternative it suggests is one industry certification, say Azure or AWS, plus a 2-year community college degree for foundational math, followed by a local industry apprenticeship.
And the predicted outcome?
It drastically shifts. 78% job placement probability because of the immediate applicable certification, a $55,000 starting salary, and a total financial cost of only $15,000. And crucially, the skills acquisition is 78% aligned with current market demand. It shifts the goal from institutional accreditation profit to personal career profit.
That's a life-changing financial trajectory.
Wow.
Okay, now for environmental patterns, the ultimate test of long-term profit thinking.
The pattern recognition here is all about comparing resource extraction profit against ecological sustainability limits. The agriculture industry transformation example is a perfect showcase.
The current pattern, what they call destructive profit, involves monoculture farming, heavy pesticide use. It maximizes immediate yield, nets $50,000 per farm annually. But FPAI simultaneously calculates the long-term cost.
And the long-term cost is catastrophic. soil exhaustion in 15 years, requiring increasingly expensive chemical inputs, water contamination leading to local health crises, and critical pollinator collapse. FPAI quantifies these externalized costs, projecting that in 10 years, that farm will need a 30% subsidy just to break even.
So that $50,000 profit is just an illusion.
It's a debt owed to the future. The FPAI guided model counters this with a regenerative profit strategy.
Which involves what?
It guides the farm toward crop rotation, integrated pest management, and investment in soil health like cover crops. The AI models the ecosystem benefits as financial assets. Now, initial profit drops slightly to $42,000 a year, which creates a point of friction. But FPAI proves that by year 5, the reduced input costs and enhanced crop resilience cause the profit to jump to $73,000 a year, surpassing the original destructive model.
So regenerative practice becomes the overwhelmingly profitable choice over a 5-year horizon.
And FPAI tracks all the additional non-monetary benefits. An 89% increase in soil carbon sequestration, pollinator population recovery, water quality improvement. The system proves that sustainability is intrinsically the higher profit pathway across any meaningful time frame.
Finally, let's look at human relationships and social patterns. This moves FPAI into the realm of social metrics, focusing on the distinction between transactional versus relational interactions.
FPAI applies social network analysis and relational outcome prediction in the workplace. The example focuses on a manager who is prioritizing immediate performance metrics, pushing the team hard, measuring only daily output over investing in team development and trust.
And short-term, this yields a measurable 15% productivity increase.
The manager
It gets a bonus. But FPAI calculates the hidden cost.
It does. It uses relationship erosion patterns based on stress tracking and interaction quality analysis. The long-term prediction is a catastrophic 67% turnover within 18 months.
Wow.
And when FPAI runs the cost analysis for recruiting, for training, and for the productivity loss for that 5-person team, the total projected loss is $450,000. That immediate profit was a fiction based on debt.
So the FPAI recommendation has to demonstrate the financial profitability of relationship building.
Exactly. FPAI suggests investing $30,000 in skills training, team development, and flexible scheduling over 6 months. The predicted outcome is an 8% productivity increase, a little slower, but sustained a 92% retention rate and a calculated $430,000 cost avoidance over 18 months.
So it proves that relational profit built on trust and development far outweighs the fleeting illusion of transactional profit. Section 3 dives into the core philosophical underpinning of FPAI. We're addressing the fundamental paradox. If we're rational and capable of building such complex technology, why do we repeatedly pursue short-term actions that guarantee long-term destruction?
It's a critical question.
Why build FPAI if we're just afraid it's going to optimize destruction?
Well, the sources state that historical destruction happened for 3 reasons that FPAI is specifically designed to overcome. First, the consequences were invisible until it was far too late.
Right.
Second, the winners could externalize the costs onto the losers. And third, information asymmetries enabled exploitation without any real accountability. We just lacked the cognitive capacity to model true systemic complexity.
So FPAI is kind of like a mirror, showing us the true cost of our actions in real time.
It's the cognitive augmentation we need for survival. By providing that real-time pattern recognition, FPAI makes destruction visible before it's irreversible. And that creates massive accountability pressure, both economic and social.
It eliminates that false choice of profit or our sustainability.
Exactly. By proving that the sustainable path is consistently, mathematically, more profitable across meaningful timeframes, it shifts the equilibrium, making cooperation the most rational and profitable choice.
The system's goals are really defined by what it works against, the anti-patterns. Let's start with extractive profit patterns. This is the classic zero-sum wealth concentration model.
Extractive patterns are characterized by value capture without value creation, rapid wealth concentration at the top, resource depletion, and stakeholder exploitation.
Like clear-cutting a forest for immediate timber sales without replanting.
Perfect example. FPAI detects this by monitoring wealth flow patterns, tracking resource consumption rates against regeneration, and analyzing stakeholder outcome distributions. It can even predict system collapse points based on that resource debt.
But how does FPAI counter something so deeply ingrained in our current financial structures?
Through radical transparency and quantification, it calculates the true costs, including all those externalized harms like soil loss or pollution cleanup. It highlights regenerative alternatives like a sustainable forestry model and demonstrates that those pathways are viable. And it creates the transparency needed to force accountability on those who continue the extractive model.
Okay, next up is zero-sum competition. That belief that for me to win, you have to lose. It leads to information hoarding and artificial scarcity.
And that pattern is incredibly damaging because it suppresses innovation that could benefit everyone. FPAI tackles this using advanced game theory modeling and opportunity cost analysis.
So it can calculate the lost economic value created when two companies duplicate research because they won't share information.
Exactly. The concrete counter strategies are, first, revealing positive sum opportunities, showing where collaboration yields a 10 times return over competition. Second, facilitating cooperation platforms. And third, crucially, rewarding value creation over value capture. It works to build an abundance mindset through concrete financial evidence.
The third major anti-pattern is maybe the most insidious in modern finance, short-termism, the obsession with quarterly profit, which leads to intergenerational theft.
Short-termism is endemic to our current reporting structures. FPAI identifies this through really sophisticated detection methods, long-term consequence modeling, multi-generational impact analysis, and identifying system tipping points.
Like realizing a factory stock price goes up today at the expense of its supply chain stability in 5 years.
Precisely.
So how does FPAI translate intergenerational theft into something that affects today's decision makers?
It visualizes the future impacts vividly. For instance, when a country takes on massive debt to finance short-term consumption, FPAI models the future tax burden on the next generation, and it calculates the present value of those future costs.
So it forces decision makers to account for the financial debt they're placing on their own descendants.
Yes. It creates long-term incentive alignment by making the future stakeholder, the future generation, a tangible part of today's decision calculus.
And finally, the problem that undermines both democracy and free markets: information asymmetry exploitation.
This is where complexity is deliberately used as a barrier to give insider knowledge an advantage. FPAI counters this with knowledge distribution analysis and transparency gap identification. The counter strategies are all focused on democratization,
Universal information access, plain language translation of complex documents.
simplification of complexity, and the active encouragement of knowledge sharing, all of it.
Now let's talk about human nature integration. FPAI isn't dictating morality. It's providing data to help us overcome our own deeply ingrained cognitive shortcuts and biases.
It's a behavioral economist's dream tool, really. It directly addresses cognitive biases. Take loss aversion, where we overweight the emotional sting of immediate losses versus potential future gains.
Right.
If adopting regenerative farming causes a small profit dip in year one, FPAI reframes that choice by showing the compound equivalence that the risk aversion today prevents a much larger quantifiable payoff tomorrow.
And the dreaded present bias, our preference for immediate, smaller rewards over deferred, larger ones.
FPAI visualizes the compound effects of patience using immersive data simulations. It can show a young person precisely how much more their retirement fund will be worth if they just defer a $10,000 purchase today.
And it tackles other biases too, like in-group favoritism.
It does, by demonstrating shared interests and mutual benefits across different social or economic groups, making the self-interest of the out-group transparent and compelling.
But we're not purely logical. What about our emotional side?
FPAI doesn't replace human values. It amplifies our positive human capacity. It enhances empathy by showing the real-time impact of decisions on real people. It uses data overlays to connect an abstract environmental policy to the face of a child suffering from respiratory illness.
It creates an emotional connection to abstract consequences.
It does. And in terms of purpose fulfillment, it helps individuals find meaningful contribution by connecting their personal profit directly to collective benefit. But crucially, FPAI respects autonomy. It provides information to support informed choice. It honors individual values and goals. It doesn't issue coercive commands.
The system's success depends on humans choosing the better path, just armed with better information. Let's talk about FPAI's predictive power through the lens of history. Section 4 explores what would have happened if FPAI had been active during some of the most devastating crises of the last few decades.
Right. This moves the conversation from theory to, well, critical feasibility analysis.
We begin with the opioid crisis pattern. The historical destruction began with pharmaceutical companies misrepresenting addiction risks, leading to massive overprescription, which was then fueled by sales incentives to doctors.
And the social cost was completely externalized. The pattern was allowed to run for decades.
So if FPAI was active in the early 1990s when these patterns were just starting, what specific data anomaly would have triggered that first alert?
The AI would have instantly detected that opioid prescriptions were increasing 300% without a corresponding increase in recorded injury or chronic pain diagnoses.
A clear pattern anomaly.
A huge one, detected by comparing prescription data against verified patient health records. By year 3, FPAI would have matched this pattern to historical cases of cascade failure, like earlier drug crises, with a 73% similarity score.
But predicting a crisis is one thing, intervening is another. What specific and likely politically difficult interventions would FPAI have triggered?
3 areas. First, real-time prescribing alerts to physicians, showing them their prescribing patterns relative to their peers, and the predicted addiction risk score for that specific patient profile.
Okay.
Second, transparency requirements for pharmaceutical marketing spend and sales incentives that are linked directly to prescription volume. And third, public health early warnings that project the $50 billion annual social costs and 400,000 deaths before they happen.
Now, a skeptic would ask, wouldn't the lobbyists just discredit the AI model? Argue it was biased against profitable treatment?
And that's a reality FPI has to face. Its strength is its transparent, auditable methodology. The core countermeasure is that FTAI would simultaneously model alternative pain management protocols, non-opioid interventions, showing 82% effectiveness with a 95% lower addiction risk.
And it would prove that those alternatives were also profitable.
Highly profitable for hospitals and non-addictive treatment facilities. FPAI doesn't prohibit, it illuminates a superior economic pathway.
Let's move to the 2008 financial crisis pattern, a crisis defined by complexity being used as a barrier to exploitation.
If FPAI was active in 2004, it would have used its transformer models to just unravel the complexity of things like collateralized debt obligations and credit default swaps.
It would have seen the risk building.
It would have detected mortgage default correlation exceeding historical norms, specifically within low-income, high-leverage areas. And crucially, it would have matched this synthetic risk concentration pattern to 1929 pre-crash indicators with a 67% similarity.
So it sees the ghost of the past crisis hidden in the complexity of the present. What interventions would have been mandated?
Immediate risk concentration visualization, showing precisely which institutions were most exposed and what percentage of global GDP was leveraged against toxic assets. It would enforce household debt sustainability scoring, red flagging predatory lending products in real time.
And regulatory early warnings.
Broadcast to everyone, demanding higher capital requirements for banks engaging in that high-risk securitization.
But could a single AI system really prevent $20 trillion in wealth destruction and 10 million foreclosures? The political inertia against changing those profitable practices is just immense.
FPAI is a tool of transparency, not coercion. Its power is in information democratization. By translating those complex risks like subprime mortgages into plain language and providing every citizen, regulator, and journalist with the same clear visualization of impending systemic collapse, it creates a unified political pressure that becomes impossible to ignore.
So the damage prevented would have been in the tens of trillions.
If the intervention was heeded, yes.
The source also looks at the Amazon deforestation pattern, a current existential crisis.
FPI is currently tracking the deforestation rate exceeding regeneration capacity by 400%. Pointing toward an imminent tipping point for savanna transition. The economic impact of losing the Amazon system rainfall generation carbon sink capacity is estimated at over $1 trillion in global economic loss.
So how does FPAI intervene here?
Real-time satellite monitoring and economic modeling. It provides regenerative forestry economics to local landowners and governments. The alternative pathway it detects is sustainable low-impact harvesting combined with ecotourism and sustainable agriculture,
Which has a profit potential of
$50 billion annually, sustainable indefinitely, compared to the one-time limited profit of clear-cutting.
Finally, let's just quickly revisit the political example, the campaign finance pattern.
FPAI detection uses correlation analysis showing that a donor's contribution amount predicts vote alignment 89% of the time for contributions over $100,000.
And in contrast, alignment with general constituent preference is only 34%.
Right. This democratic risk pattern matches pre-collapse indicators in multiple past civilizations where wealth capture superseded public interest.
That correlation provides a powerful, quantifiable warning about the health of the political system.
Yes. And the intervention isn't to ban contributions, but to illuminate the distortionary profit pattern it creates. The transparency interface, promoting alternative funding models, visualizing conflicts of interest. FPAI arms the electorate with perfect real-time knowledge of who is financing policy.
Of course, FPAI can't be a one-size-fits-all solution. It has to be inclusive and account for specific gender and age group applications.
It's designed to recognize and counteract historical bias patterns. For women, it focuses on wage gap recognition by calculating the true market value for specific roles, modeling career interruptions, and calculating the true economic value of unpaid caregiving work.
With interventions like salary negotiation guidance.
And optimizing flexible work arrangements as a sustainable profit path for employers.
And for men, the pressures and destructive profit patterns manifest differently.
FPAI looks at toxic masculinity health impacts, analyzing the correlation between emotional suppression and cardiovascular events, and relationship pattern analysis that links a lack of social cohesion to productivity loss.
So interventions focus on things like emotional intelligence development and encouraging help-seeking behavior.
Exactly, showing the long-term relational profit of vulnerability.
And the age-specific applications guide individuals across their entire life cycle.
For infants, 0-12, it's tracking developmental milestones, providing nutritional guidance. For adolescents, 13-19, it's detecting peer pressure patterns, monitoring mental health, and providing non-debt burdened educational pathways.
Yeah, and for the core workforce.
For young adults, 20-35, it's crucial for career trajectory optimization, financial literacy, and positive habit formation. For middle age, 36-60, the focus shifts to health maintenance, financial security, and relationship evolution.
And for older adults, 60+.
FPAI aids in health maintenance, social connection, and legacy planning. It facilitates continued contribution pathways, ensuring that the definition of profit includes non-monetary value creation like mentorship or volunteering, and tracking that value.
A global system has to account for vast cultural differences. How does FPAI address cultural patterns?
The development mandate requires deep localization. FPAI must account for varied value hierarchies, systems that prioritize the collective over the individual different time orientations, and alternative economic systems like gift or barter economies.
That's a huge challenge. How do you translate profit into a value system that rejects market capitalism?
It requires translation beyond language to concepts. It has to be built with multi-stakeholder development teams from diverse regions. The AI needs cultural sensitivity, training algorithmic safeguards that prevent it from imposing Western financial metrics onto indigenous value systems.
Local pattern validation is crucial.
It is, ensuring the AI's guidance reflects local, sustainable values, recognizing, for instance, that social reputation might be the primary form of capital in a given community.
Section 5 brings us down to the concrete realities, the infrastructure required, and the predicted outcomes. What specific tools and systems are needed to deploy FPAI?
We start with the personal layer. First, the FPAI wearable health monitor. This isn't just a fitness tracker, it's a continuous biometric monitoring device integrated with profit health analysis.
So it tracks vital signs, stress patterns, detects early disease warnings, and links those directly to personalized guidance on health.
Exactly. The estimated cost is around $200–$500 per device with a 3 to 5-year development timeline. Its application integrates with insurance premium optimization, where sustainable health behaviors result in tangible financial savings.
And then there's the personal decision guide, the FPAI Decision Assistant smartphone app.
This is the real-time guidance system for personal, professional, and financial decisions. It provides career pathway optimization, investment guidance showing long-term stability over short-term spikes, and environmental impact tracking for your consumption.
The key here must be accessibility.
It is. The estimated cost is a free basic tier with a $10 monthly premium for advanced features, and it has a rapid 2–3-year development timeline.
But if this app is tracking our every decision, how do we ensure privacy and security?
Privacy has to be built in by design. It must use advanced on-device processing, meaning the raw personal data never leaves your phone unless you explicitly permit it. It relies on use-controlled data sharing, where you dictate which systems your doctor, your financial advisor can access aggregated patterns, not raw data points.
Okay, moving to the community level, we have the FPAI Municipal Dashboard.
This is the city-level pattern recognition tool for policy optimization. It maps economic activity, tracks social cohesion indicators like volunteer rates, neighborhood trust levels, and it guides infrastructure optimization. It's designed to help city councils allocate resources where the highest long-term return on investment in terms of community well-being is predicted.
What's the investment required for a city to implement this?
Estimated cost is $500K to $2 million per municipality with a 5-7 year development window. And it needs to provide real-time transparency interfaces for citizens, allowing them to visualize city spending against public benefit metrics.
And finally, the grand scale, the FPAI Global Knowledge Network.
This is the decentralized backbone for planetary challenges, climate change mitigation, pandemic early warning, resource distribution modeling, and conflict prevention. It relies entirely on federated learning across international institutions and requires international treaties and cooperation.
So it's a huge investment.
An estimated $100 billion global commitment over 10-15 years.
If FPAI is successfully implemented across these layers, what are the projected positive effects? The why care for the everyday person?
At the individual level, the gains are immense. FPAI projects 156% improvement in outcome optimization just by eliminating cognitive biases and short-term decisions. Real-time guidance provides massive financial literacy gains. Early health interventions are projected to reduce healthcare costs by 30%.
And predictive career guidance could increase earning potential by 23% over a working lifetime.
It could. And globally, on the community level, we see reduced inequality through transparent profit pattern exposure and greater social cohesion because the data makes mutual benefit clearly visible.
Societally, we're looking at system reform.
Right. Innovation acceleration AI implementations are projected to improve sustainable profit margins by 134% and robust crisis prevention systems for economic and environmental collapse. The system moves us from reactive triage to proactive steering.
This sounds almost too good to be true. We have to critically address the negative potential effects and mitigation strategies. The biggest fear is centralized control and surveillance.
Risk 1. Surveillance concerns privacy invasion. It's a huge risk. The mitigation strategies are crucial, and they have to be legally mandated. This includes federated learning, which means AI models are trained on local data on your phone or your local server without ever moving the raw personal information to a central server.
And we also need things like differential privacy.
Absolutely. And transparent algorithmic auditing, ensuring ethical bodies can verify the algorithms are only looking for specified harmful patterns, not monitoring individuals.
The second major risk is that FPAI could be manipulated or weaponized to optimize exploitation under the guise of efficiency.
This is a risk that cannot be ignored. The primary countermeasure must be making the core algorithms open source and publicly auditable. There must be multi-stakeholder governance, not controlled by any single corporation or government.
And ethical guidelines embedded in the system design.
With regular impact audits and whistleblower protections as non-negotiable legal requirements.
What about simple over-reliance, the technical dependence risk, where we humans just stop thinking critically?
FPAI is designed as an assistant, not a replacement. Mitigation involves strict human-in-the-loop design, where critical decisions always require human approval and override capabilities. Furthermore, FPAI deployment must be integrated with mandatory critical thinking education, teaching people to question the AI's guidance.
And the system should even include periodic digital detox recommendations.
Prompting users to disconnect and rely on their own judgment periodically, yes.
And finally, the digital divide risk. If only the wealthy have access, it just makes existing inequalities worse.
FPAI cannot be allowed to become a tool for privilege. Mitigation requires significant public infrastructure investment to guarantee high-speed access globally. The free basic tier must cover essential functions like health and education guidance. We need multilingual interfaces and, crucially, offline capability for essential functions so populations without reliable connectivity can still benefit.
As we conclude this deep dive, let's just synthesize the true scale of this undertaking. FPAI emerges as a potential solution at an unprecedented moment of converging global crises. Climate emergency, exploding inequality, the collapse of institutional trust.
The patterns are all clear. We are at a critical juncture where the current trajectory driven by extractive short-term profit predicts potential civilizational crisis within the next 30 to 50 years.
So FPAI presents the rational choice.
Implement tools toward sustainable prosperity. The pattern recognition reveals that cooperation actually outperforms exploitation in the long run, which eliminates the economic justification for our destructive behavior.
We need to set realistic expectations, though. What can FPAI fundamentally not do?
Well, it can't eliminate human free will. It can't guarantee perfect outcomes. And it cannot replace the necessity of human moral or ethical judgment, which must be constantly applied to the data it provides. It is an amplifier, not a dictator.
But what it can do, illuminating consequences before they occur, demonstrating sustainable pathways, and building robust accountability systems, that seems like a vital prerequisite for our collective human survival.
Absolutely. The sources make a chilling quantitative conclusion. The risk of inaction, a near 90% probability of climate collapse, spiraling economic inequality, far exceeds the implementation risks of FPAI.
But that only holds true if we build it with the proper safeguards.
Provided we build it with those legally binding safeguards we discussed, open source code, decentralized architecture, and multi-stakeholder control.
The trustworthiness of FPAI, therefore, depends entirely on how we build it and whether we can prioritize shared survival over short-term advantage during its construction. So that leaves us with a question for you, the learner. Given this insight into predictive real-time pattern recognition, what single destructive behavioral pattern in your own life, whether it's related to personal finance, career choices, or even health habits, what would you most want FPAI to analyze today for its most profitable, long-term sustainable pathway?
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon.
This is DigitView.